Hello and welcome back to the Adventures in Advising podcast. This is Matt Markin, and we have a special guest host with us today, none other than Dr. Melinda Anderson. Melinda, welcome back as always.
Oh, thank you, Matt. It is good always to be back and good to see you. How are you doing these days?
Doing very well. I think last time we had you on, it was at the beginning of the year. And so now it's mid-year. Probably a lot has happened.
A lot has happened. But isn't the, enrollment calendar fly us by? And many people are celebrating commencement. So happy commencement season to many of you who, if you haven't already walked across that stage or helped your students walk across that stage, congratulations.
And speaking of commencement, so around this time, you sent me a text message and said, "Hey, Matt, I have the perfect guest to have on the podcast, an extraordinary story." You want to kind of help intro it before I bring on your guest?
Yes, absolutely. So, Matt, given the fact that we're talking about commencement season, I had the honor and privilege of coming back to speak at a celebratory dinner for our guests that we're getting ready to bring on in a moment. And it just really reminded me of the power of the conversations academic advisors can have. And I reached out to you immediately and was like, Matt, if you can, please, if there's an opportunity for us to come on the podcast, I think that there's a very powerful story for all of us in the advising community when we think about the work that we do with our students, whether they're undergraduate or graduate, and the power of, one conversation and the power of community that we have as advisors and the way that we, if you will, wrap our arms around our students as we help them walk across the stage. And so with that, I just had an opportunity to be a part of a commencement celebration with one of my former health sciences students and was able to watch her walk across the stage. And it was just beautiful. And I knew immediately we needed to be able to bring her story to this platform because I think it's just a powerful reminder of how amazingly important the work is that we do as academic advisors.
Melinda, you're probably the one person that will say, "Hey, Matt, I have an idea." And I'm like, let's do it, no matter what it is.
No, I appreciate that, Matt. And you're just so brilliant. Like I said, every time I come here, I just have to let people know that, this concept that you had, this platform that you've been able to bring stories. I just want to thank you again, always. And I'm just excited to be able to bring our newly crowned doctor to the stage to be able to share this story. But when I think about the work that you do and you continue to do, and I know that the podcast will be ending soon, but the adventures will not, right? They will always continue when we will find other ways to amplify our voices out here. But again, just thank you so much for what you've been able to do for our community.
Oh, I mean, you and Charlie have been the two biggest supporters ever for this podcast. And people already know this from multiple times that I've mentioned it on podcast episodes. But when I was originally going to end the podcast in episode 75, you were the one that said, "Matt, just take a break and think about it." And I thought about it. And then we continued the podcast. And I'm so glad that you've been such a big supporter of it and a big part of it being a guest and multi-time guest host. So I'm going to jump off, going to bring on your guest, have a fantastic conversation.
Thank you so much, Matt. And with that, let's bring on Dr. Nixon-Lambert. Hello, Erika. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Melinda. How are you?
I'm well. And, again, thank you, Matt, for allowing us to be able to have this conversation. And I just congratulations on being, completing your journey thus far, I think is what we want to say. So with that, why don't we get into the details and have the audience just learn a little bit more about you. I just have to keep saying it. Dr. Erika Nixon-Lambert. I just have to keep saying it, but we'll get into the details of your journey. So let me start with our first question. Can you just share a little bit about your journey finishing pharmacy school and then how academic advising, whether it was positive or negative experiences, how has advising shaped your path back to pharmacy school?
That's a great question. And I don't even have doctor on my name because I'm only 1 week into it. That's something I'm absorbing, the doctor title. But for me, I had experiences both positive and negative on my journey to pharmacy school. And the first, I hate to start off with the negative, but that's the way my story played out. When I was an undergrad, actually, the very first time I came in as a student who was a top performing high school student, never really struggled with school. I went to a small high school and I came to huge VCU. My graduating class was 32 students. And I walked into my first bio class and I think there were over 300 students.
Right. My
advisor at the time said, I think that you can really take on this course load. And she gave me 19 credit hours my first semester freshman year. And that included chemistry, biology, all of the English and things like that. And so looking back from that experience, of course, that semester did not end the way that I was used to performing academically. It just kind of took a toll on me. And so when I went back the second time to take my prerequisites for undergrad, I was like, I do not want to be in that position. I know what 19 credit hours translates to now. A lot of students, don't know that first, coming in. And so an advisor is very important. And for me, I did have a parent who graduated from college, but she graduated in the 60s. And so she was a physical therapy major, and she didn't even take organic chemistry. So, of course, the course load was completely different. And so when I came back to speak to an advisor, which honestly, going back to school was the last choice for me because I did not want to stop making money. I was in a career. And she pretty much told me she didn't think I was a good fit to be a student who would matriculate into a pharmacy program. And so all those feelings came back. I was like, I couldn't do those 19 credit hours. I was not successful at that. Now I'm being told that, now that I'm a different student, things have changed and I have a new focus.
So, for example, because you were non-traditional in terms of coming back to school as an adult and into the sciences.
Yeah. A student who had been out of school, close to 20 years at that point. I was a non-traditional student. My performance in undergrad was not stellar the first time. Even coming back in with a new focus and a new determination, I was still given that advice from an advisor. And so for me, I thought, okay, I'm not going to do this. And then I had a chance meeting with Melinda. I was working at a cosmetic counter and she came in to get some makeup like around the holidays. And she just happened to ask me, where I see myself in 5 years. And I was like, oh boy, here goes this conversation. So I went through the whole conversation with her. I told her, I'm not really sure what I want to do. And what she said to me after I told her about my experience with the advisor is that, advisor's job is to give you the pathway to get there. No, it's not going to be easy. There may be some things that come up, but our job is to give you the pathway to get there. And she let me know that she was an advisor at VCU. And I was like, my gosh, what are the chances? And so she asked me to come back and see her. And she gave the pathway for me to get to pharmacy school.
Yeah. Erika, what I love most about what you I'm going to call you Dr. Erika. What I love most about what you just shared was your determination in your story, because, from your undergraduate experience and recognizing the kind of student you needed to be around balance and credit load and the sciences, to how amazing you were when you did get out in industry, because even the way that you talk about yourself, it's like, oh, I was working in industry. Like, you were a manager at a major distributor, right? Mac, you know what I mean? Which, when you think about kind of that work and how tremendous you were in the retail space, you like you said, you were making really good money. You were very highly successful, but something kept pulling you back into wanting to come into another academic journey. And even though that you were deterred with the advice that you were given, when asked again, your heart was still full I still want this experience. What advice do you have for me? And being able to come and being willing to talk to me about, here's the way that this path could be laid out for you. I think for me, I just want to highlight, especially to those who are listening to us, is that we will come across, students who maybe have been given or told or have been shared information from a perspective. And how do we show up, right, in those conversations? And how do we engage our students when we think about what it is that they're trying to accomplish or their goals? But your heart remain open to what it is that you wanted for yourself. So I just needed to pair that. I just need to pull that in to be like, Dr. Erika, that was you saying, you know what, I still want this. And so what does this look like for me? And so when you think about your journey forward, right? So when you think about looking back in terms of either what did you need most from advisors as you were thinking about being a non-traditional student? Because you didn't just do pharmacy school, honey, you killed it, okay? When you think about how you move forward, what kind of experiences do you think students needed to be seen and heard and appreciated as they're going through their journey? Could you speak a little bit to like what helped you continue to excel? Because it was a different experience for you when you decided to move forward.
That's a great question. I think one thing is like our program, which like most, especially programs where you're going into a doctorate and things like that, is very competitive. And so the mindset was, you have to get straight A's. And me coming in with experience, I was like, while you can't be the student with straight F's, you don't have to be the student with straight A's to make a difference. Balance there. And so I started, I had to have a conversation with myself that while I'm going to strive to be the straight A student, if I don't land there, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with being a straight F student. I want to progress in the program, but I started to think about how can I personally be impactful? And this was in my mind, I'm just thinking individual students. But what happened is in me trying to help those individual students kind of come to that understanding that if you don't do well on an exam, and this was me talking to myself, once you finish, no one is going to say, hey, on exam 1 in med chem, the average was 85. What was your grade? Like nobody cares about that, but they will think about what type of impact you left with other students. They will think about what your mission is as far as what your work is when you finish school, how you've helped like the team and the group. And so my experience is just kind of, it's like my management experience from Mac shifted into mentorship in pharmacy school. And so I remember there was a student who was crying uncontrollably after an assessment that they had because they didn't think they did well. And they were like, I don't know why I decided to go back to school. I'm older than all of the students here. And I just don't know if I can do this. And, I was like, actually, you're not older than all the students. Don't let the good moisturizer fool you. But I was like, I'm actually, older than you are. And like her face was like, what? And so I said, it is going to be a little bit harder because we have more things that we have to balance. We connected because she was married as well. She had a mother-in-law who was some health challenges, and mine was going through some at that time, along with my parents. And so I said, when you have those things to balance, if mom or mother-in-law calls, yeah, you may have to put the studying aside for a little bit. Or if you have a mortgage to pay, like my mortgage does not care that I went back to school. They're like, I just paid it 3 months. I don't care what exam is going on.
They did not care.
They did not care. And so I just connected with her on that level to tell her, look, it's going to be hard. We're going to have some tears, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. And I was like, if it means that we have to have a conversation just to keep each other accountable and keep each other going. Guess what? We're going to be the oldest students walking across the stage in 2026, and both of us finished. And she said to me at graduation, she was like, I did this with your help because I just needed somebody. I needed somebody to realize what I was going through. And I've had so many of those types of experiences with students that I didn't realize kind of changed their viewpoint of how they looked at their time in school, to help them to realize like it's normal for you to go through the hard times. And I need you to tell me that like next week when I need to hear it. And so it just kind of grew, my mentorship just kind of grew in pharmacy school. And then before I knew it, the professors were telling me the students were coming to them. The dean was telling me that students came to him saying, the advice that I gave them and how I helped them. And that's how I left my impact on this.
No, I love that, because I have a question here that actually was speaking a little bit to that about how can colleges design better advising systems to support students who are either career changers or go to school later in life, or, for example, how can we design systems to help? Well, I'm sitting here trying not to read the question, but read the question. So, for example, your story reminds us, for example, that students carry invisible responsibilities. So, for example, you talked about my mortgage didn't care that I went back to school, or, caregivers. So how can our institutions, systems, advisors better recognize the full humanity of students that they serve? Because that's essentially what your mentorship was doing. It was recognizing the full student in front of you. Do you have any advice for institutions or the advising community about how we could do a better job showing up for our students?
That's a great question. And I think just being open that students don't look the way that they used to. That traditional path of students graduating from high school, automatically matriculating into college, doing their 4 years. That is not a path that is as common as it was some years ago. And so just being open that every student doesn't have that path, because I will say, when I would start classes, they're like, I know everybody in here is like 18. You don't have any, that much experience in life. You've never worked a job. And I'm like, hold on, that's not everybody. So just being open to the fact that there's going to be a mixture of students that are there for different reasons, from different backgrounds, with different experiences, and they may have things to offer. And then just encouraging connections between those students. So if, like, for instance, I wish I would have met that student when they first started pharmacy school, because she really struggled her first year. And I didn't meet her until the end of the first year in that second semester. And so I wish I would have had the opportunity to have that connection with her, to let her know, like, hey, there's somebody here who has similar circumstances. So, if we need to touch base and just kind of vibe off of each other on good and bad days, you pick me up when I need it, I pick you up when you need it. I think that sense of connection would be helpful.
So I completely understand that, your mentoring and support of students, while you were going through your years in pharmacy school, really probably also helped to, build confidence in the way that, you were framing your own experience, I would imagine, right? Going in and helping others. Because I can imagine all the things that you were thinking about in terms of coming back into that space and reimagining how you were seeing yourself as a student, kind of moving through the experience. Talk to me a little bit about, you started an organization, and I would really love for you to talk a little bit about, what do you think that, for example, that your work around mentoring, was that a catalyst for why you started the Black Student Pharmacist Organization?
I think for me, like, coming into pharmacy school, I was connected with another Black student in pharmacy school, and they actually already had, like, what I would say is like an affinity group, where the Black students were there to, like, support each other, to just kind of welcome each other, have their own community. And then when I started as a P1, I remember I put a message in the affinity group and I was like, hi, I'm Erika, I'm a P1, I'm from Richmond, blah, blah, blah. And it was like dead silent. And I was like, okay, is anybody here? And so I started to talk to other students and were like, yeah, we had this idea of an affinity group. And they told me the reasons why they wanted to start it because they felt like they needed more of a community on campus. And so I was like, well, maybe this affinity group will get going. So I started, me and another student planned like 2 events and put it in the affinity group. We even had like, I can't remember the name of the office, but there was someone who's in charge of events who said, hey, we'll sponsor an event for you guys if you want to do one. So we did like an off-campus event. We had a lot of students come to that event and we got to know each other because you don't get to know people outside of your cohort. So I was like, well, who is like ahead of us is here to kind of guide us and who's ahead of them to guide them. Because I would like to be able to guide the students who come underneath us, which essentially is what this affinity group was supposed to do. And so then I said, well, my wheels started turning. I guess my management leadership started kicking in. And I was like, okay, well, the people are here. They're saying what they want. Somebody just needs to put it together. And other students decided we were going to put it together. So I was voted the president the first year that the organization was on campus. We could not become an official organization as the Black Pharmacy Student Organization unless we were on campus for 2 years and we maintained like membership and that we did events and things like that. And so I was like, well, we're just going to function as if we're already an established organization. And then that way it'll be a seamless process after those 2 years. And so I was voted as the president the second year, which I did not plan. I said I would run for continuity, but no one ran against me. And so I ended up being the president of BSPO and a pharmacy leadership organization, PLS, at the same time my third year. And at the end of that third year is when BSPO was voted in as an official organization.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that is just, when I think about, how it was, a need of wanting community and other people had a similar need that you were able to find. But then the institutions being able to say, okay, there is a structure in place. And then you just saying, we're going to operate as if we're already there. And so that just speaks to your determination and spirit that I'd mentioned earlier, that you were like, all right, bet, I'm going to move forward and we're just going to operate accordingly. And so I just wanted to bring voice to that because it just speaks to, again, how you just moved through. You didn't just do school, right? You did that. And so I just wanted to echo that again, because when I think about your journey, it highlights a lot of resilience. But students should not have to rely on resilience alone. And so when I think about institutional supports that made a big difference, are there other institutional supports that you can think of that really help support, your journey through pharmacy school?
Well, I think some institutional and then also some outside. When Melinda left me, when she left VCU, I was devastated, of course, from after I told you about my previous experience. But she had someone in place for me to talk to, who was Henry, who she gently passed me off to Henry Lewis III, who then became my advisor. And after Henry was there, I was like, look, whether you leave VCU or not, I'm just going to be calling you since you're a Richmond. Like, that's fine. So I was like, I always feel like Melinda and Henry, like they're my lifetime advisors at this point. So for him, when he was still at VCU, he was my advisor. And then when he decided to leave VCU, I still called him as my advisor. The Division of Academic Support on the VCU Health Campus was very, very helpful because just the amount of information you get in a professional program, I was like, it definitely turns up a notch from undergrad. And I was like, okay, it was challenging enough to balance undergrad And that mortgage, like I said, that doesn't care I'm going back to school. They didn't care that I was going into a professional school and it was being turned up. So I then had to learn, how do I manage this more intense course load and everything else that's going on? And the Division of Academic Support did that for me. There was an advisor there. Her name was Brandy, and she introduced me to like studying with mind maps, because I realized as I got older, I'm more of a visual learner. And I was more of an auditory learner before, but things change. And so those concepts, being able to put them down into a concept map and color code them, made it easier for me to retain that information. And that's something so small that makes such a big difference, retaining information for exams. And then I always talk to people about going to talk to your professors, because people get so scared. I don't know why. And maybe I definitely was that student in undergrad, I can say. But for me, I'm like, okay, I'm putting this money in, like I need to get everything I can out of this.
Right.
So I think the power of talking to the professors, because I remember there was one professor, Dr. Sakagami, and I didn't do that great on one of his exams. And I went to him and I was like, I studied everything, like I don't understand. And he was like, well, this one concept is the one where you miss the most questions. And I was like, oh my God. So instead of me studying all the stuff from that exam, I focused on that one concept, and my grade like went up from there. So I think that sometimes having someone who can look at the overreaching, who's had experience, the overreaching studying or preparation that you're doing, they can sometimes give you a small tidbit like he did for that exam that can make like such a huge difference.
Right. No, I just love your advice there, because it was basically the network, right? The community. I would always encourage students that, it's not just one thing that helps to build your academic community. So I just love how you spoke to, the Division of Academic Affairs and Support, but your faculty, and then also your peers, the cohorted nature in which professional sciences are designed, is that built-in community, and then you were able to use all of your networks and resources. And so, when I think about the journey forward, can you talk a little bit about what's next for you in terms of how you're going to be moving forward with your residency?
Yes, absolutely. So one thing before I get to residency that I just thought about, the power of community, the cohort. I was not who did a lot of group study, and I had to study in pharmacy school, and I did not expect to connect with these students, some of them half my age, but we really trauma bonded, I would say.
Not trauma bonded.
And so I really learned a lot from them, and I think vice versa, they learned a lot from me. I don't want to discount that experience with them, because honestly, that study group, I would not have gotten through pharmacy school if it wasn't for them. Now, as far as like next steps for me, I did apply to residency. And so I will be under the VCU Community Pharmacy Residency, which will station me as a pharmacy resident at Bremo, which is an independent pharmacy. So I'm really interested in kind of merging that cosmetic background that I have in my pharmacy into compounding. And the great thing about an independent pharmacy is you have a lot of flexibility in what you do. You're not just like dispensing medications to patients. You're doing medication management. You're helping to counsel them on those medications. You're sometimes doing site visits at some of the homes that they oversee. So it just offers so many more opportunities. And then I will also get a teaching and learning certificate through VCU. So I'll be teaching back at the school, seeing, P2 Erika is struggling. So I hope that I can tell, future P2 Erika, if she's out there, which I'm sure she is, to hang in there, because I've been there and it's rough. Do it. You can do it.
No, I really, because you also got your certificate in aging studies.
Yes.
Aging studies.
Yes.
And so that's what I was just like, I just
Yeah.
You didn't just go to pharmacy school, you did it. And so I think for me, it's also just highlighting that, your journey back into academic space, you really said, I want to do it all, meaning I'm going to take advantage of the opportunities in front of me, building community, getting to know my faculty, looking at how pharmacy is blended with the skills that I've brought from my industry, the mentorship that you were able to have with other P1s, P2s, as you became P2, P3, as you were moving on. And so when I think about the work that's in front of you, it's just a perfect blend of the work that you had already started. And I just love the fact that you're going to be teaching, because that's just an extension of the mentorship that you were already doing. Because when I think about who you are as a person, you were always giving back or thinking about how to give back. And there is no doubt in my mind when I was sitting there and I was hearing the dean say, now for the final award of the program at your commencement exercises. And he was just reading off this amazing student who had done so much for the School of Pharmacy. And the only one student wins this distinguished award. And then he said, Dr. Erika Nixon-Lambert. And tears were coming out of my face. And you did the slow rise, like, oh my God, he just said my name. And I was like, that's my boo, that's my baby. And I was hitting Henry, and I was like, Henry, they said her name. And you had the slow rise. What was that moment like when you had heard, well, I'm sure you probably didn't hear, everything that you had accomplished? He was speaking to you. What was happening in that moment?
It was definitely an outer body experience. I did not hear what he said at first, because people were like, oh my gosh, do you think he's talking about you? So I just had so many people asking me that. And then when he called my name, I was like, what did he just call my name for? I knew it was like this, it was the Dean's Award, but I didn't hear what he said in between. So I was honestly in shock. So that slow rise was me like, is this real? Did he really say my name? Am I the right person that's supposed to go up? And then I watched the recording the next morning, and I just broke down in tears because I was like, where I thought I was making these individual small impacts with students just day to day, or planning programming for the school, like for instance, doing the Cooper Scholarship Fund. I co-hosted that with the school, BSPO did, and it was to raise money for a scholarship in the name of that's under the first Black pharmacy student graduate. And so that event was extremely successful, and we raised a lot of money for that scholarship. So just thinking about, in my mind, I'm like, I want us to honor the first Black pharmacy graduate, because he paved the way for the rest of us, not even thinking there's a lot of money that's coming behind this program.
Right.
That money is going to then go to students who are working out in community pharmacy, who are going to work with African-American patients. So it's just so many things that I didn't think about the reach that they would have. I was looking at that small goal that was right in front of me, not knowing that those steps that I made have now made such a big difference at the school. And so it just kind of came full circle after graduation. And I was like, wow. It almost, I'm not even looking at myself. I'm looking at someone else.
I know. It was, I just knew when he was reading it off, I was like, I know he's talking about Erika. I mean, I just knew he was talking about you. So I just wanted to share, because I have a question that I want to ask you, but I wanted to share this first, because this comes from my remarks that you were just so gracious. And so I want to share with the audience, rarely do we as advisors have an opportunity to follow the full journey of our students when we work with them. And we were together for a while, when you started, prerequisites, ECATs, white coat ceremony, 3 years. My thing is, when you're making that journey, it's a commitment. And so, for me, when I just think about everything that you had set out to do, you were determined. And so then for you to continue to stay in touch and to share back with Henry and myself about where you were in your journey, just thank you. Because as advisors, sometimes we don't always get to see how our students are moving forward. And I made the joke that, you were the student that showed up in the office and wrote out all the notes, and you did do that. Right. But I wanted to share this part that I said. In the moment when I met you, I just wasn't meeting just a makeup artist. I was meeting a future pharmacist, a leader, and a testimony that delayed dreams are not denied dreams. And I also spoke to the point that we need to be careful about how we enter people's lives. Some people plant doubt, others plant possibility, and we have to be careful about what voices we water. And I know that we met for a reason, and you have kept us connected through your seasons. And I know in my heart we will be together for a lifetime. And so my question to you is, what would you want every academic advisor to understand about the power of a single conversation with a student?
I mean, I just want them to understand that it really can make or break them. I often think about like my story. I had the negative experiences first, and then I had the positive advising experience. But I wonder if it were flipped, like would my story be different? Like if I started off with that positive experience and then, someone came in with a negative experience, would my story be different? For me, I'd like to confidently say, no, it wouldn't be different, but it might be. And so I just thinking about if somebody has a dream and they're determined to do it, then like you said to me, Melinda, an advisor's job is to show the path of how to get there. That's what they should think about. Like almost look at it like that yellow brick road they're going to go down. And some people are going to, fully go down a yellow brick road. Some people are going to go halfway, but don't set those limitations on them before they can even hit the yellow brick road. And so that's what I would say to advisors is that, pave that way and show them all the way to the end. Don't stop them before they get there, because you just never know. And I don't know where that previous advisor is now, but I'm Dr. Erika Nixon-Lambert now.
Oh, I know that's right. Well, I just, again, want to just thank you for being able to join us and share your story, because I just think about the full circle. We all start off with an idea of what we want to do, and we say, how do I get there? How do I see myself getting there? And we know that we need a village or a community around us. And I saw your village at your celebratory. Well, no, actually at commencement. I saw your village at commencement, and then I saw them at the celebratory dinner. But I know that your village was there way before they started celebrating the end, and just the way your heart. I mean, there were so many connections in that room, and so I know that your heart is one that will continue to pour into your community. It is one that will continue to pour into your students. So your future students, your future advisees, they'll be able to look at this video and they'll say, Dr. E was always like this. She was always like this. She was always willing to give up her time and to help support people around her. Because as you move forward, you always took people with you. And that was just so evident in the way that the dean spoke of you. It was evident in the way that, your pharmacy colleagues came to celebrate with you, the way people hugged you at the commencement, the way that your family from near and far, your high school friends showed up. I mean, I'm telling you, your village moves with you. And I just want to thank you. I know that you're preparing these days for the journey ahead. And so just being able to take the time to come on the podcast and to share with our advising community the power of a conversation in terms of being able to help a student capture their dreams. So thank you so much, Dr. Erika Nixon-Lambert.
Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, the community is definitely important. And advisors are a part of that community. And just as a side note, my kindergarten teacher showed up to my graduation. Now, kindergarten was only a few years ago, people. She said to me that she saw my leadership back then, and I thought, I don't know what I was doing in kindergarten to show that. That's a whole different podcast.
I know.
But you never know what's in those students. You never know what they're capable of, and you just never know where they'll go. And I'm just so glad I was able to let you know and let Henry know, like, where this story, I can't say ended, where the chapter is in my story. And I thank you so much for being a part of that.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting us be a part of that. And you're absolutely right. This is the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And so I cannot wait to continue turning the next page. I can't wait to see what happens next. So thank you so much.
Thank you.